This is Tell Me What to Read, the podcast of booktopia.com.au. I'm your host, Nick Wasiliev, and today I'm excited to bring you another special podcast-themed episode. With the launch of Endo Awareness Month, Stefania sits down for an interview with Erin Barnett, TV personality and author of Endo Unfiltered, How to Take Charge of Your Endometriosis and PCOS. Check the show notes below for timestamps for all interviews, as well as links to all books mentioned. Now over to Stefania's interview with Erin Barnett, author of Endo Unfiltered.
Hi Erin, thank you for joining us. Today we're discussing your new book, which came out this month. It's called Endo Unfiltered, How to Take Charge of Your Endometriosis and PCOS. It's the first time I've heard of PCOS, but we'll get on to that. Firstly, I'd like to thank you personally for being so candid and open in this book about your own personal experiences. And I learned a lot reading it, and you've answered some questions of my own that I've been struggling with as well. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
So to start us off, can you explain what endometriosis and PCOS are, and what is the difference between the two?
Yeah, so endometriosis is where the lining, similar to that grows in our womb, grows in other parts of our body, but it still reacts to all the hormones telling us, that we shed that hormone, that layer of, it's called the endometrium, every month and we get our period, but instead obviously it's got nowhere to go when it goes everywhere else in the body, but it still reacts to those hormones, so you still get those crampy feelings everywhere else. PCOS is polycystic ovary syndrome, and that is just when you have a hormone imbalance in your body and they cause large cysts to grow inside or outside your ovaries. There's all different types of cysts. You can get a dermoid cyst, endometrioma cyst, which is like an endometriosis cyst, so they work really good together. But that's really much, I mean, they're both shit, but they're like sisters, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, you suffer from both, which is what you share in the book. So how, can you describe how these conditions are different to just having plain old bad period pain?
Well, see, it's funny that you say that, because nowadays there is no such thing as bad period pain, because we shouldn't experience any bad period pain. So that would be the first clue that something was wrong. But the difference is, like I said, one's cysts and one's endometriosis. So they work hand in hand together when you have both of them. If they're separated, they can be treated different and you can feel different. So it's kind of hard. I also have just been diagnosed in December with adenomyosis, which is endometriosis inside the uterus wall, which is no surprise. So it's just all together.
You poor thing, so you got the trifecta.
I got everything.
Oh, okay, so you discuss in the book that there's no cure. Mm-hmm. So can you share how currently it's diagnosed and how it's treated?
So endometriosis can only be correctly diagnosed when you have keyhole surgery and a biopsy is taken of what they suspect is endometriosis, and they send it back to the labs. Polycystic ovaries can be diagnosed through ultrasounds. You can also do blood tests as well. And that can be treated you can go on different types of pills or different hormone blockers and things like that. Endometriosis cannot be cured or really helped. You can go on different medication. You can have surgery to remove the endometriosis, which is what most people do. So it's not really that exciting, or I don't have any really good news to say that there's something out there that's a cure for both of them. It's just really trial and error with all different types of treatments that are available.
And a lot of women suffer from it without ever knowing that they've got it. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. A lot of women only ever find out that they've got one or the other or both when maybe they're trying to have a baby and they go get all the medical tests they need and then they realise they have it.
Well, I personally went in, when I was a teenager, I went into hospital to have my appendix removed. Instead, I came out with one less ovary.
Oh.
So I didn't realise until I read your book that I had been suffering from PCOS. So that was many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really enlightening for me reading that, because I just associated it with something that happened to me as a kid, and it was done and dusted. And now reading your book, I went, oh, that explains so much.
Yeah, that's so wild that happened, and they didn't really explain much of it to you.
They didn't tell me anything. So this was, I'm talking the 80s.
Yeah, but not much has changed. So that's why this book was one of the, I was really hoping that it would start a change, because to be honest, not much has changed in the medical world, where they just do things and don't really tell you what's happening.
Yeah, so the first I heard of it was like 24 hours after the operation, and the surgeon came in. I still vividly remember it. I was a kid. He came in, and it was a teaching hospital, so he came in with a group of interns.
Yeah.
And then they were discussing my case, and that's how I discovered it.
That's crazy.
So they weren't even explaining it to me. He was explaining it to these other doctors.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I thought that I was meant to have had my appendix out, that I would have a tiny little scar, and the scar goes from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Across.
And I think maybe because you remember it so vividly, there must have been something about it that was a bit traumatic for you.
Yeah, the whole thing was traumatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you explained it in your book as well, that experience of you're a teenager and they're talking to you about fertility and having kids, and you're sitting there thinking, hold on, I don't even have a boyfriend.
Yes.
You're talking to me about having children.
Or they also talk to, like, when you're younger, they talk to your parents when they don't really talk to you. Even though you're in the room, they talk to your parents, which is also like just try and gauge from your mum or dad what's happening, if it's good or bad, by how they're reacting.
Yeah, so that's my own personal story.
Yeah.
So moving on from me and back to you. So I think people would be really shocked by the statistics of how many women suffer from these conditions. I was quite surprised, really, because it's that sort of topic that's been quite taboo. Mm-hmm. It's been considered like a woman's problem. So people haven't really spoken about it. Personally, I've only been hearing about endo myself maybe the past 15 years or so. It hasn't really been in conversations or dialogue before that.
Yeah.
So can you share some of the statistics?
Well, I know that 1 in 10 women do suffer from endometriosis. I'm pretty sure it's almost 1 in 9 now. I don't know the statistics for PCOS, but it is more common than endometriosis. It runs in the family, so you can almost guarantee you have them if someone in your family does. Like my sisters and my mum have PCOS. None of them have endometriosis. The only person on my family tree that has it is my nan. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose in my family it's hard to tell because it was a long time ago.
You can't go back.
Very different research. Okay, so March is Endometriosis Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
And you've recently been made the ambassador for endometriosis, or one of the ambassadors for Endometriosis Australia. So can you share what this organisation is and how you became involved in it?
Well, Endometriosis Australia is fantastic because they're always raising awareness in every way possible. Also help funding for new research. They get you connected to all different people around the world going through the same thing. And on their website and on their social media pages, they are just so informative about endometriosis, how you can get help, where to get help. The support groups are really good. I just reached out to them one day and just asked if I could be an ambassador. I thought I punched enough holes in like my surgery that I deserved some sort of title to like help others, and they were so on board with it, and they were like, absolutely. I had no affiliation with them before I went on I'm a Celebrity and chose them as my charity. I was doing charity work for them because you can just set up your own little charity thing on their website, like personal one, and it goes straight to them. I was doing that way beforehand, and I'm always like advocating for women and women's health. So I just thought, I would like this title, please.
And so what sort of things will happen in March that you can
So there's all different types of charities. There's like an endo march, as in like you march for endometriosis. You can wear yellow every day or just one day during March. There's all different fundraisers. There's high teas that you can go to. All the money obviously goes straight to Endometriosis Australia to help fund new research to hopefully find a cure one day.
So apart from you've mentioned you've been on reality TV, you're also a nurse. So
yes, I did do. Yeah, I did study nursing. Yeah.
You describe, so similar to me, you had a really traumatic experience at a young age with your first surgery, and that helped shape your decision to become a nurse. Can you share a little bit about what that was like, and if you've seen improvements since that first experience?
Yeah, so I think because I was so young and the nurses that I had were so like rough, and they didn't look at me like I was this young teenager. They just looked at me like another patient that they had to take care of that day. And I just thought, oh my God, I would love to be a nurse right now and get rid of them so that I could look after these people. And I feel like when you go into the hospitals now, it has changed. They don't just say person in bed 3 and things like that. They actually have to say your name, and so it's more personal. But I still feel like there are some nurses out there that are still old school, and my personal opinion is that maybe they need to be retrained in the new world, because their care level just kind of drops a bit because they're probably over it, because they did it hard and all that back in the day, which I understand, but when you go into a hospital, you're very vulnerable. Yes. So I look at each person back in the day and just think, well, this person doesn't really want to be here, because no one really wants to be in the hospital. So to try and make it as nice as possible until they can leave.
So you have appeared on reality TV. You've mentioned that. So can you, in your book, you share how you decided to audition? But for our listeners, I think they're a little bit curious about what made you decide to audition in the first place, and how, like, if you were self-conscious at all going in about the conditions that you had and how they would impact your appearance on the show.
Yeah. So the first show I went on was Beauty and the Geek. That was when I first turned 18. Honestly, I didn't really experience that much pain. I had a few surgeries up my sleeve, but it was no big deal for me. I just saw the ad one time, just thought I would apply. I never thought I would get on it, but I did. Nothing really came from that. Then I went through a breakup where a boyfriend had cheated on me. I was with them for 3 years, and my friend sent me a link for Love Island. It was the season 1. I was like, got nothing else to do with her, may as well sign up. Went for the audition and I got it. I never thought I would. And then by that stage in Love Island, I think I did 2 more surgeries. And then the pain was like, I was on a good pill that seemed to help me then, but I was always having to make sure I didn't feel too bloated or anything like that on TV. Then on I'm a Celebrity, I just had I got asked to be on it from the producers. I didn't have to apply or anything. And my endo and PCOS was really bad. I just had my ovary removed before I went on the show. I had blood clots and that come out of me while I was on the show. They even had to get me my own heat pack, a water bottle that the campmates were heating up for me all the time, making sure that there was hot water on the fire. So as I'm getting older, the pain and the experiences are getting worse, where normally it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Where you get older, your body actually ends up fixing itself, kind of thing. Your hormones start to drop, but mine are just increasing. So each TV show has just been different.
So, and have you found that your profile since being on these shows has helped raise awareness of endo, and how has it helped?
Oh, absolutely. If I had never been on Love Island, is where my social media page just started growing, because it was all around the world. And if I never went on those TV shows, I would never have the voice that I have now to raise this much awareness about endo and PCOS. I know that maybe Instagram won't be around forever, so I'm just taking advantage of the platforms that I have, and I'm trying to reach every person I can around the world, and they're also reaching me, and they can help me just as much as I'm helping them.
Yeah, so that's a blessing and a curse with social media, right?
Yeah, I know. It's a blessing and a curse.
So some more statistics. Every year, Australian productivity, I was surprised by this one, is impacted with a $6.5 billion burden to productivity. That surprised me. There's been a lot in the media recently about women advocating for period leave.
Mm-hmm.
Been asking for it for years now.
Yeah.
So can you share with our listeners, what would period leave mean to people like yourself and other sufferers?
Oh God, it would mean so much, because the pain and suffering that you have to feel when you go to work and when you are on your period, and if you are suffering with a lot of pain, you don't really want to be at work, and you're probably not going to be 100% yourself. So, you know, it doesn't really benefit you or the company to be at work while you're suffering. So it would just be such a relief, and to know that you're with a company and a business that understands, and that would make, I feel like, employees stay longer, because you have that understanding. I mean, we only get a certain amount of sick leave each year, and that we end up using that, and then it's like you're using your annual leave, but all you're doing is at home and you're in pain, so that doesn't seem right.
So speaking of leave and work, you cover how in the book the community has talked about positive outcomes from COVID lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
You call it Pando positive, which I
thought
was really cute. So can you discuss how sufferers have found their pain has improved due to lockdowns, and what can we learn from that?
Oh, absolutely, because you're in the comfort of your own home, and I mean, you have access to all your medications and wheat packs. You're in more comfortable clothing. I think when you are in your own safe environment, you seem to heal better and recover better. So lockdown and work from home options seem to have great benefits. So I really hope the work from home option stays around for a lot of companies, because, you know, I've heard a lot of people say it was amazing because they could just go to the microwave, heat up their wheat pack, or take some extra Panadol, and that's okay because they're at home, and they could maybe sleep at home on their lunch break. But you can't sleep at work on your lunch break, that's inappropriate, but at home you can. So they just seem to be recovering better and healing physically so much better working from home.
So now that we've proven that we can be as productive and efficient from home, then that gives women a little bit more ammunition, right? To be
absolutely
able to advocate for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'm a bit of a numbers person. So
I've noticed.
I noticed a few more numbers. So funding. I was pretty shocked, and I think people will be pretty shocked to know about how in the UK, so it's not Australia, I want to stress this, you're mentioning that it's in the UK. So in the UK, they invest 5 times more funding into research for erectile dysfunction that only affects 19% of men. And yet 90% of women suffer from period pain, and there's not as much funding that goes into it. So within the Australian, because we can't speak for the UK, but within the Australian endo community, are you optimistic about where the funding is going and the research, how it's going in our country? And what do we need to do to improve it?
Yeah, I do think there is room for improvement, absolutely. I saw somewhere not too long ago that there is more funding going into migraines and all that affect less people than it does endometriosis, which was odd, because it's like, I feel like if I was up there in the medical board making these decisions, I would look at stats and see what is affecting majority of Australia, men or women, and aim for that, not aim for something so little. So I think just the more awareness we make about these things, the more louder you talk, the more people are going to listen. So, and the more people you have having a conversation could change a lot of things. So I'm very positive that the funding that's being raised at the moment and the research that's happening right now is going to be super beneficial in the future, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, and like I said, I suffered from PCOS, and I think all my life I'd suffered from it, because you had some of those questions of why I was feeling particular ways and certain symptoms that I had, I'd never thought about it. So now, even on the weekend, I was speaking to my sister and I said, I'm going to raise this now with my GP. So I'd never raised it, right? So the more we talk about it, the more we talk about these things, the more hopefully women rise up and we can get a bit of funding.
Absolutely.
So we touched on it already, how both of us had the experience as teenagers where they were discussing our fertility, right? And you've got a whole chapter in the book about it, which I found really fascinating. Like what your experience, what you're going through with doctors and the decisions that they're making on the how to further your journey through this.
Yeah.
So and you rightly say there's the point where I went, oh my God, that's so insightful, where people will go to a plastic surgeon, they'll have horns attached to their heads, they'll split their tongues to look like lizards, they'll do all these weird things. But then if you start talking about your reproductive organs with surgeons, they think that there's something wrong with you mentally.
Absolutely. And I also feel like there's also one thing that I say a lot is when you're talking about getting your reproductive organs removed for medical reasons, sometimes you will have to go see a psychologist to make sure you're fit to make that decision. But if you become pregnant, you don't ever have to see a psychologist to make sure you're fit to be a mother, which I think is super surprising because it's still both dealing with the reproductive system. If I turned around to the same gynecologist and said, oh, actually, I want to have 6 kids, they would be like, oh, absolutely. They won't, ask anything else. And 6 is a high number. My mum had 4 kids, but I feel like they would just be like, okay, let's do everything in our power to make sure you get that. But when it's the opposite, they're like, oh God, no. You can't be making that kind of decision on your own. Like, do you have a partner? It's like, well, my partner shouldn't even be involved in it. Whether I'm married, it's not a us decision. It's a me decision. I've had cosmetic surgery done. I've had breast implants done. I actually had my plastic surgeon tell me that the implants that I had chosen were too big for my body and he does not agree that they would be right for me. And I said, well, I still want it. And he said, well, can you sign this consent form that tells that he wrote in there that he told me the risks and all that, but I'm still agreeing to go ahead with it. And I signed it and I still got it. Even though what he said did happen, I didn't go back and get angry at him. I was like, damn it, like he was right. And I signed on the consent form. So that was, my decision. So why is it so different for gynecologists? I don't understand. I know they study different things, but I just don't understand how come they can't come under the same umbrella with that consent form.
Yeah. So that was, for me, one of the most shocking things in the book. Like the way you explain it, that it will be very hard for you to have children because of your conditions and even going through IVF. But IVF will impact, taking the hormones is going to impact your conditions. So more than likely, you aren't going to have children, right? Yeah. So to me, I just found it gobsmacking that knowing all of that, they would still not consider giving you the surgery to give you a quality of life.
Absolutely. And that is what I've been arguing with them for ages, because IVF was taken off the table when they realized that my body is acting like it's already on IVF. It's overstimulating. That's the problem we're having. So IVF, I couldn't even do it because I would have to, kind of be hospitalized and monitored 24/7 while on this treatment, because I've had 2 cysts rupture inside of me, which is also like extremely dangerous. So it's off the table. So there's no other options. So I don't understand why they won't just take out the reproductive organs that are causing me pain. And I know I'm young, but they say that if you're on hormone replacement at this age, when you're 60 or 70, you could have a heart attack or a stroke or any heart disease. And I just feel like at that age, I won't be thinking, when I was 27, my doctor did this to me. Like I definitely didn't fight for it for like 10 years. So it's just quite frustrating, because if something's causing you pain, instead of making it better, they're making it worse because they're thinking about my future, where I thought we were always told to live today as if it was your last. But in my life, I have to think about when I'm 60 today.
Yeah. So you mentioned your grandmother having a hysterectomy after the birth of your dad.
Yeah.
Your dad. My mum had a full hysterectomy after my youngest brother was born. So it's sort of, to me, again, touching on what we were just talking about, there's this idea that, well, you've had and my mum was only in her late 30s. I don't know how old your grandmother was. But there's this hypocrisy because, well, they've had kids, so now we can take out the organs. Yes. But because you haven't had kids, you haven't had children, you can't make that decision yourself.
Yeah, I know.
That's what it seems like.
100%, that's what they're saying. And I think that they're just trying their best because, I don't know, Western medicine, the modern medicine, everything is coming out. There might be something out there that will fix this, but I don't want that. Do you know what I mean? I'm in pain every day, so I don't want to have a child. I can't physically do it. My body won't allow it, but what my body is doing is causing me a lot of pain and suffering at such a young age. So I just don't understand why doctors look at you more importantly if you have a child and if you don't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like they don't classify you as doing the right thing if you say no to having a child, whether or not you have something wrong with you. Men, like my mum, she asked for her tubes to be tied before I came along, and the doctor said, oh, well, I hope your husband has to agree on this. And I'm like, this just would not happen now, because how come it's like we have no rights anymore? Like, we're not living in the olden days. We are in 2022. Like, surely we've got more rights. But yeah, it's quite frustrating.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So that was the chapter that for me really hit home, especially because we're moving into International Women's Day, and all these issues are quite topical. Okay, so your book, I must say, you have a lot of great tips. It's really useful. Like I said, you answered a lot of questions that I had. You go into useful questions to ask your doctor, what you need to pack if you're going into surgery, what to expect from all the different tests.
Yeah.
So it's a great tool. How would you like people to use this book, and what would you like them to take away from reading it?
I would like them to use this book as a guide to, if you have a friend or a family member or someone you know that's suffering with this and you don't know how to approach them about asking for more information because it could be sensitive, I want them to use this book as some help. If you're going through what I have, I want this book to be also a helping guide on how you can try and get through it and be okay. Like, it's a shitty situation, but there's a lot of people going through it, which makes you feel a bit better. Like, misery loves company kind of thing. And I just want this book to be like an endometriosis Bible that you always go to, and you look at it and you think, oh my God, I forgot to ask my doctor this. I'm going to take the book with me. Like, write on the book once you have it, like circle, highlight, anything, because it's so helpful. So, and this is the book that I wish I had when I was 14 years old, because I when I read back on it, I just think, like, internal ultrasounds, like I show you photos on what to expect, like not just doctors, the way they talk to you, it can be so confusing, so the medical terms they use. So this book is a Bible.
Yeah, look, it's great that it is such a topic of conversation these days, because when I was a teenager, the only source of information, we didn't have the internet, the only source of information for this sort of thing was Dolly Doctor.
I used to like the Dolly Doctor. We had to pull the side off on the magazine because it was like,
the sealed section.
Yeah, the sealed section.
The sealed sections. So the fact that there's this conversation happening and it's more in the discourse with women, I think is great. Personally, what did you discover about yourself on this journey writing the book?
I actually didn't realise how much I had gone through as a teenager until I had to write it all down. So it was actually quite confronting to know, when I think of someone who's that age going through that, I can't fathom it. And so reading, it was a real eye-opener for myself, and I realised that I have closed off emotions for certain things that I must have started doing at such a young age. And when I started writing the book, I thought, well, no wonder, like, look how much you've gone through. And that's when people say to me today, like, you've gone through so much. I'm like, yeah, I don't realise until I wrote it down, like having to write down the timeline of my surgeries. I was like, really? Like, I just still can't fathom that I've had that many, or this is what's happened to me. So it was an eye-opener, and it was super empowering to know that I'm okay and I can be a guide for other people.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's great. So for people at home, make sure you go to our website and have a look at the book and place an order. It's very useful. Like I said, it helped me as well. So thank you very much, Erin.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks to Erin Barnett. You can find links to all books discussed today in our show notes or head over to booktopia.com.au. Join us next week as we drop our second special episode covering International Women's Day. Thanks for listening and never stop reading.